right, sister, you've got your goals set. It's time to craft your all but done plan. In this module, we'll go over how to strategically think about your go plan. What are you going to do when it's time to file? Keep an eye on the resources below. We'll work on it throughout the entire module. Hi there and welcome back. Congratulations on making it this far. In today's module, we're going to go through how you can craft your ABD plan. All but done. In this module, we're going to go through creating a specific, detailed, outlined plan for exactly what you're going to do when it's time to press go on your divorce. But you're not going to go ahead and start doing it. All right. You may feel tempted. You may feel like, hey, I am ready, Hannah. I am a person of action. I got to get going. It's all but done. It's ready to put in place at the time then you need it, but not a moment too soon. And here's the thing. A couple things you need to keep in mind in this module is there are certain things you can do before the divorce starts that you can't do after the divorce starts. So this is where you're going to start to get some things in motion where we've thought about the long-term vision of where we're headed. We've thought about what we want at the end of the divorce. You see what we're doing? We're working our way back to, okay, we're about to press go. Then what? You would be shocked to know how many people end up in my law office with absolutely zero plan of what they're going to do when we file the papers. They don't know when they're going to tell him. They don't know how they're going to pay their bills. They have no plan. I would have been one of those people too, right? I got to the end of my rope in my marriage, and it was like divorce was this life preserver. It was all I had to keep myself afloat. So sort of like Elle Woods, on Legally Blonde, like, I think I'll get divorced today. It's like, I think I'll get divorced today. And I tell this story, you may have seen it somewhere, or if you watch the webinar to get here, about how I was starting to put some things in place and starting to get my plan together. And my now ex-husband figured me out. Because the thing is, I'm a really consistent person, and you may be too. I act pretty much the same way in every situation. Like, you know what I'm going to do. I mean, you may not know exactly how I'll feel or something, but like when my behavior starts to change because I'm such a routine person, you would know something's wrong. So that's exactly what happened with my ex-husband. And I didn't have this plan in place. He sensed that something was up. I say my give a dang was busted. Your give a dang may be busted, but mine was really busted at that point. And I remember in particular this one weekend day, I think it was a Sunday, and he was huffing and puffing about something, all right, and mad, stomping around, went up to his office, and I did not care. Like, I had the idea of, like, I guess that's your problem. Like, I don't know what you're mad about. I don't really even care. And that was so wildly different from the way I'd behaved in the past. And he'd figured it out. He came back home and was trying to pressure me. What's going on? What's wrong? Blah, blah, blah. And all this intense pressure. And I just snapped. I didn't have a plan in place. I said, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And I remember it. It's like there was a before and an after in my life of that moment when I said that thing with the power of like a magic spell. I told you I was going to talk about Harry Potter again. Like a magic spell had happened, and the rest of my life began. Problem for me was I didn't plan out how I was going to tell him, and I wasn't ready yet. And I didn't have any money set aside, and I had no plan for how to pay my lawyers. I didn't know when we were going to, none of it, y'all. And I suffered through the rest of my divorce. It's like I was kind of screwed before I even started. And screwed makes it sound like it happened to me. Look, I set my own self up for the outcome that happened to me. And I don't want that to happen to you. You're not going to go into this thing, show up at some lawyer's office or find the forms online or through a program and start and file before you have all your ducks in a row, right? You're not going to walk into the OR unprepared. You're not going to walk into your business meeting. You're not going to even show up at the PTA get together without all your stuff together. That's not who you are. You're absolutely not going to do that when it comes to your divorce. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through each and every step you need to take so that when you press go, you've got it all handled. I had squirreled away just a little bit of money, kind of figured out where I was going to go. I don't want you to get caught flat-footed like I did. This module is going to come with a warning label. It's about to start getting real, y'all. Okay, so far we've been visioning, we've been thinking about things we want to happen, planning and goals. That's out there kind of stuff. This is more like in here stuff. It may feel to you when you're going through this worksheet and the exercise we're going to do like you're staring into the sun. And I want you to know you're not alone in that. It hurts. It's hard. There are things in here you ain't going to like. Decisions you're going to have to make that you really wish you didn't have to. You may want to be like an ostrich or emu thing and put your head down in the sand. And I understand that. And you know, if you need to pause and give yourself the day, the night, the weekend, or whatever, no one will blame you. I understand. And that you 3 or 5 years out that has that future for her and her kids, she's counting on you to pick yourself back up, stare into the sun, and get started. All right, go ahead if you haven't already, and down below you're going to see access to the resources for this module. And this one is called the ABD, or All But Done Plan. So go ahead and get it pulled up. We're going to go through it together. And I want to let you know, look, this is probably not something you're going to finish in one sitting. You're not going to be able to just like listen to this in your car and do nothing. It's not by osmosis. No one's going to be able to do this for you. I'm going to do it with you. Your girl Hannah's with you in it, okay? But give yourself some space and time, because probably some of these sections are going to create more questions than they do answers. So you may be like, look, Hannah, I don't know. That's a booger. I don't know what I'm going to do about that situation. So be prepared that might happen, and give yourself the grace and the patience and the time to go through it. So, okay, you're going to see the first page is this instruction document where you're going to go through in fine-tooth detail all of the various sections of your life and make a plan for what's going to happen when you press go. Here's why this is absolutely essential. Must do before you ever talk to a lawyer, before you ever file the papers. Because once you actually start the ball in motion, once you're visiting with the lawyer, once you put a retainer down, once you've started filling out the court forms online, if you're doing it yourself, something happens where it's like this whole new wave hits you. And trying to figure this out in the middle of all of that craziness will be like trying to brush your teeth with Oreos in your mouth, or like cleaning your house with toddlers covered in mud in it. All right. I don't want that for you. At that point, we need to have all of our stuff together so you're ready to press go when the time comes. All right. So the key to having success and doing this exercise and filling out this document is to be really specific. You'll notice like I've got dates in here in the examples. Who's going to do what by when? Who is going to do what by when? Okay. So you'll see just in the example, we filled out a few things that you could do. So like in the section on how am I going to pay for legal fees? What's your plan? Divorce is expensive. It costs a lot of money. That's how, I'm a divorce lawyer for my day job. That's how we make our living. We have to pay the people who work for us and paralegals and whatever. These lawyers are not going to do it for you for free. You're not their mama, their best friend, their sister, whatever. I mean, probably, or you wouldn't be watching this, I imagine. You're going to have to pay them to do it. And how are you going to finance that? retainers at my law firm start at $7,500 for a divorce, at the time I'm recording this, and like $10,000 if we know it's going to be a little complicated. And they really kind of go up from there. I don't know what the lawyer you're going to choose is going to charge you in your state or your county and your city, but I would start to think in the tens of thousands of dollars. And you may say to me, Hannah, it might as well be 1,000 gajillion million dollars. I don't have that kind of money. I feel you. I hear you. There are some resources probably where you live. Just real quick on this point, like in Austin, we have volunteer legal services for people below a certain income level. This is a time, things you may not even be thinking about, like paying for legal fees. Can you get a loan out against a 401k? Can you get another credit card taken out? Can you get a loan? Do you need to start siphoning off some money before you ever file? And that is none of those are ideal. You may say, I don't like taking money out of my 401k. I don't want to take a loan out of my 401k. I hear you. We get that sometimes. Like, people like, I don't like having credit card debt. I bet you don't. Neither do I. But you got to get divorced. So that may be your only option. And the thing is, most places, most states, counties, and everything allow you to take on indebtedness to pay for legal fees, use savings, use loans out of 401ks. I mean, you have to check with your 401k and all those things, like all of those particulars, right? I'm not telling you whether you can or can't where you are, but you need to have an answer to this question. How are you going to pay for fees? And you may need to do a little looking into whether there are any certain rules in the place that you live about how to do that. Can you just get out a credit card? That sort of thing. So it's worth thinking about. But generally speaking, a credit card, you could access the 401k loan, but don't do it. It's all but done. Don't run out and take that 401k loan out, because then he's going to know what you're doing or may find out or something like that, right? So it's like when you're ready, you're going to do that. Now, a credit card, that's one, if you think you're going to need to get another credit card, I suggest you go ahead and get that going. Have it sent to someone else's house so the credit card doesn't show up at your house, maybe like to a best friend, a mom, or somebody else's, with kind of as much limit as you can get on it. Word of caution, if you do that, if he's a real like credit report sort of guy and gets, I don't know, what, Equifax or something like that in his email, it could alert him. So I need you to proceed with caution before you do that. But generally speaking, having access to some credit is a good idea. You may be thinking through, is there a way that I can save some money out of every paycheck and it would kind of go unnoticed? I mean, the key in this is having a plan in place where you don't tip him off or her. Tip them off in advance so that you're not caught flat-footed like I was in my bedroom saying, I don't want to be married to you anymore, with no plan. And as a result, my whole divorce went worse. I made a deal in mediation it was a bad choice among bad choices because I'd gotten myself so backed into a corner because I didn't have any of this planned out or done in advance. You don't want to tip him off and get confronted in your bedroom before you're ready to go. Trust me on this. So, okay. You may need to adjust how much money you're spending, right? So that's what you're going to think about in the paying for legal fees section. What do you need to do specifically? Okay, your exit strategy. How are you going to get out of there? What's your plan? Okay, I'm going to tell him maybe on this date, I'll take my, kids to the mom's for the weekend, or I'll ask Ashley to watch the kids while I tell him. Like, what is the plan to let him know? You don't want to just stumble into this. You may even include in there, like on the next one, how to tell him. Like, let's wait until after Christmas or after Easter or so-and-so's birthday, so that we don't ruin that for them. Because once you tell him, he may run out the door and go tell your children immediately. Like, I really hope not, but he might. And that's why you've got to have contingency plans for what will you do if he does that. My ex-husband, like not immediately, but one day he was like, I'm done with this. I'm going to tell them right now. And marched out of our bedroom and got the kids off the playground swings, brought them inside, and we had to sit there and tell them right now. I was not ready. I was not prepared. I had not talked to a therapist about how to tell the kids. I had nothing in order. So you want to think through these contingencies. This is the part that's going to feel like you're staring at the sun. But what you going to do if the worst thing happens? What's your backup plan? And look, that Winston Churchill quote, this like, plans are useless, but planning is essential. So whatever we set out in here, don't get like concrete in your head. It's not like it's all exactly going to go that way. But having a plan allows your brain to start thinking on and working on strategies for when things deviate, what you can kind of do. Okay, you want to think through, how am I going to pay my bills? Okay, one question is like, where am I going to have income? Well, I've got that savings in Wells Fargo, maybe from work. Maybe my dad can give me a loan if I need it. Could you start doing some Uber driving or something? Like, how are you going to pay your bills in the divorce? Because depending on your situation, especially if he primarily provides the income, if you're like a stay-at-home mom or you make a lot less money, one thing that may happen once you file for divorce is he may, or even before you file, but if he figures this out, if you leave your notebook laying around, or he finds your online drive, or he sniffs out your behavior being different, he may cut you off. He may remove your access to the accounts. Like if you're not a member of that credit union, or you're just like a card holder, right? On the credit card, you're not actually the person responsible for the account, but you just have a card holder. You're not the member. He can cut you off, cut off that. And then what? How are you going to put gas in your car? How are you going to buy groceries? What is your backup plan? And I'm not saying he should do these things. And a lot of states have laws that would tell him he shouldn't do those things. But I always tell people laws and rules are for law and rule abiding people. We are. He may or may not be. And so even if there's rules saying he can't, he may do it anyway. And then a lawyer may have to get you to court to try to restore your access, but that could take weeks, months. And in the meantime, how are you going to put gas in your Tahoe? That's what you need to know. And that one in particular, if you were the lesser moneyed spouse, that means like you have less money, I guess. I really suggest that you think this one through carefully. What is your backup plan? I don't want to scare you. I ain't saying he's going to go turn everything off. But if he does, what are you going to do to make sure you can pay for them groceries when you check out? All right, now let's talk through each one of these to give you a little context, right? So here's your blank one. You're going to fill in each one of these notes as specific as you can. Who will do what by when? Deadlines get done. That's like what we always joke about at the law firm and about lawyers in general. Deadlines get done. I'm telling you, do it for yourself. Put yourself some dates and some deadlines in here too. Now, all right, how about like, where am I going to live? Okay. Do you expect him to leave the house? Are you going to leave the house? Are you taking the kids with you? Are you going to send him to a rent house, maybe as a lease up down the road at the rent? That happens like more often than you would think. People own a rent house and that person's lease is up or something and somebody can go there. Do you think he'll leave? I think there's like man law advice out there that tells them don't leave no matter what. And it depends on your state and the value of that. But like you need to be thinking through, and this one you probably really want to talk to a lawyer about, do a consult at least to figure out the consequences of leaving and whether you can take the kids or not. But even before, like, what do you think you're going to do? Are you going to move someplace else and take the kids? Do you think he'll go? He knows there's been problems. Like he doesn't want to create a big scene. It kind of depends on how conflict gotta win the person is that you're trying to divorce. Because those guys, I imagine gals, I don't know, but I'm talking, presumably most people watching this, y'all have a husband, okay? But I mean it in case you also have a wife instead. I don't think you probably don't have both. But the more like burn it down, argumentative, obstinate this fella is that you're married to, the more likely he ain't going to leave that house. So what's your plan? All right. Probably, maybe at least your lawyer will tell you they don't want you leaving that house either. You may have to both live there together for a while until you can get into court and a judge tells you who's going to leave and who's going to stay. But like, you need to think this through. What's the plan? Who's going to go where? Are there any other options? And if it's you, to the point of all but done, like you've already researched houses, you've already got a place to go rent. Like you can leave him with a big old house payment and you're going to go a couple blocks over in the same school district. We don't want you moving the kids out of school district, but you're going to go a couple blocks over. You found this little house. You're not going to actually sign a lease, but you're going to be ready to sign a lease, like all but done. You're not going to do that yet until you've consulted with the lawyer and have a plan or have thought this all the way through, right? All but done. What will custody look like? Because you may tell him you're ready to get divorced. There's probably going to be some sort of an interim period before there are additional court orders. Like in Texas, for example, the standing orders and the general rule of thumb is things need to stay how they've been. That's called the status quo. Stay as they are. So we're going to talk a little bit more in the parenting module, but let's just say, like, what are you doing right now for custody? You cool with that being the way that it is, like the schedule? Does he travel a lot? Like, what are you thinking? Because what you may do is say, like, okay, I'm going to leave and the kids can come see you every other weekend. So you may write that down on your all but done plan. Now, as my dad would say, many a slip between the cup and the lip. I don't know if that's going to work out. It depends on the laws in your jurisdiction and how ornery they're going to be. But you need to have thought through at least what you'd like to see happen once you press go and start acting as if. A lot of it in the beginning is act as if, and the status quo becomes the new thing in a lot of places. So what plot ruiner for the module on becoming parent of the year, but like, do you need to set up a new status quo for now to set you up so that that status quo can continue once you press go? But like, what's your plan? May or may not happen exactly, but have thought it through. All right. Same thing. What do the kids' schedule look like? Who's going to pick up and drop them off from daycare? Like, look, if right now he works from home and he does pick up in the afternoons, and you work at an office and y'all split up and live in different houses, who's going to go pick up the kiddos at school when it's on your time? Like, let's say y'all did some sort of a 50-50 schedule. On your week, who's going to go get the kids? They're going to ride the bus? If they're going to ride the bus, what bus number would they be on? Who's the bus driver? Like, you want to get that specific. If they're going to keep going to the after school care, like, or could you put them in an after school care? What time do they have to be picked up? Does that affect your job schedule? Like if aftercare only goes till 6 and you work until 6, how are you going to get across town to get them picked up? Okay, so you need to think that through. You could maybe even already start talking to a high school gal or a college gal or something who could go pick them up after school and watch them at your house until you get home. So have planned that part out. That goes for the after school activities part 2. Like, how are you going to run everybody around to volleyball and basketball in your time when you don't have another parent to handle violin lessons while you handle dance and run everybody around, right? You can't assume, I guess you shouldn't assume, that he is going to continue to be a 50-50 person, if he even was, or continue to assist with all the extracurricular pickups and everything. So you want to have thought through, how is that part going to work? Businesses, like, do you guys own a business together? I've had a client before who owned a florist company, and they both worked in the business. They were getting divorced and it wasn't pretty. So who's going to operate the business? Who's going to show up to the work to do the thing? Who's going to run the books? Who's going to meet with the accountants? Like, how is that part going to go? You want to have thought through, and you probably want to talk to your business lawyer about this, like what's possible according to your operating agreement. But you want to have thought through, once I press go, what's going to happen to the business? How is that going to change? You want to also see, do you have therapists in place for your kids and for yourself? This one, if you can get this going before you ever file, it will make your life so much better and easier. Remember, I mentioned above that earlier, that there are certain things you can't do after the divorce is filed. It's a lot harder to get kids into therapy once divorce is underway, because there's this idea of keeping the status quo, keeping things as they are. And if you're already filing for divorce and you want to take the kids to therapy, the last thing on the planet he may want to have happen is that the kids go to therapy, because they may create a record and evidence against him. So he's not going to acquiesce or like agree once you've already filed and he has this big say to send them, right? That could happen. But if you do it beforehand, you're just living your life as a mom. He don't know nothing about the divorce. You're just trying to get your kids in therapy because maybe y'all been having some trouble at home, or maybe Sally's struggling at school or whatever. Get these therapists in place and go ahead and establish this pattern of care beforehand. So like, do you have that in place? Do you have someone for yourself to talk to? Assets and money, like what's going to happen with the investments? Like, are you on all of the investment accounts? Do you know the logins? Trying to make sure you have access to this. And in case there are any financial moves you need to make, because divorce might change things and may lose you some access, we need to think about that. Same thing with our real estate. If you own any rental properties, like who interfaces with the lessor, the person leasing the place. I had that come up in a divorce one time where these parties owned a commercial space, and the husband, who was not my client, the husband always dealt with the tenants, and we're talking like buku bucks a month, okay? So he was always interfacing with the tenants, and my client was totally in the dark. So when he was negotiating leases in the middle of the divorce, he was the person in position of power because he's the one who talked to them all of the time. And he's the one who ultimately like tried to get the lease to be less expensive so the property looked less valuable in the divorce. Okay, so just like, how is the real estate going to work? If you can insert yourself into these processes so you're a part of the conversation of the Airbnb, you know the logins, you know how it works, you know how that property runs, you know how to access the mortgage statements on your own house, you are sure that taxes have been paid, like getting that in place and knowing how that's going to work. Because part of what we do in this one, y'all, with the all but done plan is we line out what we will do, and it's going to illustrate to you some gaps. You're going to have a big like circle with a star on your paper because you're like, holy crap, I didn't think about that part. And then you got some additional homework, okay? You didn't think about the fact you can't get into those credit card statements, did you? That was fine when you were just married, I guess. Don't ever let that happen to you again. But it's going to create some jobs for you to do and to overcome whenever you go through this. Okay, last couple. Vehicles. With cars, like who's going to drive what car? Is your car a piece of crap? It needs brakes, it needs tires, and he drives a F-350 with everything on it. Well, that may be okay if he owes a bunch of money and you don't care. But, is your car reliable? Do you need to take some steps now to go ahead and get it new tires while you've got both of your money? Do you need to go ahead and purchase or do a lease on like a reliable little Honda CRV or something, right? You want to make sure you have reliable transportation, or as reliable as is available to you during the process, because you need to be able to get your kids around. Last thing you want to have happen is have a broke down car, no money to fix it, and then tell the judge you want primary of your kids, but you can't pick them up from school or get them to their practices. I mean, that's probably not you, but you see what I'm saying? Think that through when it comes to your cars. And then we left some blanks here at the bottom for miscellaneous things that apply in your life. Maybe holidays are coming up, you need to think through and how that's going to work. Like if you tell them in October or early November, and then there's Thanksgiving and Christmas and other holidays, right? Like how is that going to play out? You probably want to have listed out in here a game plan for how all of those things will flow together. So I know that that's a lot. It's an overview. I would do me on like 0.75 speed or something anyway, but your divorce, if you do this step, when you do this step, the entire thing is going to go so much smoother and easier for you. Here's the thing. This one's not easy. It's tough. It brings things out of the air and down to the like granular. I'm envisioning like sand between my hands on the beach, right? We're getting real, y'all. And I suggest you look at this as an opportunity to really be proud of yourself for how far you've come in this journey. Do you know what bravery it takes to get divorced? It is such a gigantic, hard, enormous, substantial decision. And the fact that you're here tells me that you're brave. Anytime I meet somebody who's divorced, I know that they're brave because you're betting on you. 70% of divorces are filed by women. Did you know that? It's probably going to be you filing, right? That's why you're doing this. You're getting ahead of the game. Good for you. Because once you file it, once this all but done plan becomes done, he's going to get a plan like that. He's going to have a strategy. He's going to get busy. Men are better at this than us as a general rule. And don't at me with all your meanness. You're probably not going to be mean to me, but you know what I mean? People give me a lot of things if I start saying men are like this and women are like this. But in general, guys are better at this than us ladies. And that can't be you this time. Your kids are counting on you. Your future self is counting on you. And remember, we can do hard things. You've got this. Get that ABD plan ready to go. And don't be like me. My whole plan was I had a recruiting business while I was in law school, and I had sort of siphoned off $5,000 into a different bank account. It was all the money I had access to in the world, basically. We lived paycheck to paycheck and everything. I don't remember. I think it was just like an accounting weird. God provided it for me in my memory anyway, that I had that money. I found a little place down the street from my preacher, like the preacher I'd grown up with. I also lived down in San Antonio by that point. And I remember telling my brother-in-law, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Me and the kids are just going to go to that house in San Antonio, and I need y'all to come like help me pack up my stuff. And then, like their dad can just like visit them every other weekend and stuff. And like we can maybe even do holidays and all of that stuff together. I remember my brother-in-law looking at me and saying, Hannah, you're not about to just march into that man's house and take that man's kids and he's just going to like smile and wave at you as you walk out the door. And I remember him saying that. It's like the first time it occurred to me. All of my balls were already in like motion. I said I didn't have a full plan. I had like those things set, a little bit of money, a place to go, and they were going to come in my own brain. Plot runner, that is not what happened. My brother-in-law was 1,000% right. But if I would have planned it out and done this work in this module that you've just done and completed, I really think that outcome would have been entirely different. And at least I would have been in the best position to know. I would know I did absolutely everything I could. And I could have thought through, yeah, I'm not going to be able to just walk in and take the kids and leave. I need to have a contingency plan. I need to have a backup plan. What if he says no? What if he won't let me go? What if I run out of money? I hadn't thought any of that through, and I paid dearly. I was in a bad spot by the time it came time to make a deal. And I don't want that to happen to you. And one way you will set yourself up to protect your kids, your money, your business, your sanity in this divorce is to create your ABD plan. So when it's go time, you're ready. And that's going to give you so much confidence in your heart. And that's one of the main things in this course that my hope is that you take away: squared back shoulders, a head held high, and a straight gaze. And this idea of do your worst. I'm ready. I'm ready. I can do this. You are not going to go in not knowing anything, with no idea of where you're trying to get to, with no idea of what you're going to do once you file papers, of how you can make sure or set yourself up to get primary of your kids, of how you can get all your paperwork together. That's not going to happen to you because you've done My Confident Divorce, and you're going to walk in with your head held high, with your eye on the vision of your future self and your future family. So keep going. You got this. If you need to take a break, take a minute to finish this one. I'll be waiting for you in the next one, okay? See you in a minute. All right, you've done it. You've created your all but done plan. And if you want, you can stop here, Don't go any farther in this module. If you feel like, okay, I've got a good picture of where I am, what I'm going to do before I press go or when I press go, then you're good. Because this next section takes it and dives a little bit deeper. We're going to be looking at some spreadsheets. And in case that gives you anxiety or makes you feel stressy or whatever, like this is not a have to do thing, but I wanted to give you these resources so that you can actually go through and get into the nitty gritty about your budget and about the money part. So it's sort of an additional part of this module. But if you don't want to proceed, cool. See you in the next one. But if so, let's get started. Okay, so go ahead if you haven't already and pull up the My Confident Divorce budget template. Y'all, I'm giving it to y'all in an Excel format. There are formulas in there. This thing is worth its weight in gold. This is something we created at our firm. It's really modeled after what we use in court in Texas. So it may have some things that your court doesn't care that much about or whatever. But like the idea here is I want you to be able to work through the financial aspect of your prep for divorce so that when you're filling in that ABD plan and you're talking about the money, you know how much money we're talking about. So let's go over it together, at least briefly, so you can get a feel. The first section, this A, is talking about the gross money you make per month. So like if you have a pay stub, you're going to be looking at the gross, not that little bitty number at the bottom, but how much money do they pay you? And then there's all this taxes stuff, right? And it's not just what you make in W-2 wages, but do you get commissions and tips? And like say you get a bonus once a year, take that and divide it by 12. You've got to account for all of the income. Or one day, if you fill this out for your lawyer and you're up on cross-examination in court, like they can say, hey, isn't it true you get a bonus and you didn't put that on your paper? And be like, yeah, I don't want you to be in that position. So yeah, I did. I just divided it by 12 because this is 1 month. Right? So same thing if you get it quarterly, divide it down. If you're self-employed, obviously that's a whole different can of worms, but hey, boss babes, I see you. Do you make rental income? All other income that you get. So like what money do you get? And look in there, it's going to do a formula and should add all of that up for you. Then this is important in Texas for child support kind of reasons. You would detail out what all of these different tax, Social Security, like figure that out. It should be just right there on your pay stub. HR can maybe help you with this if you don't have it already. And that's also going to give you a formula like, okay, so this is your gross money, then these deductions, like that's how much net money you receive. Now that, gross minus actuals equals net. Now, the thing is, the net may still not be the same as the bottom corner of your pay stub right down here. It may not still be the same money because you may have other things coming out. You have some, income tax type stuff. If you have health insurance for kids, if you have 401k stuff that comes out, HSA, that kind of thing you may, and you can add, how you do in Excel, you can like insert, add a row. Okay. So you may need to add a row for some things that apply to you. In Texas, we have a thing called net resources. So Texas people, this will be super relevant to you. If that's not you, then you can skip the net resources. It's not quite as important. But the key is how much money you bringing in each month and how much of that goes from gross minus tax type stuff. And how much of it is gross minus tax stuff minus other like elective deductions like 401k contributions, health insurance, dental, HSA, because you don't necessarily have to be having those. So knowing those two numbers will kind of help you. How much money's coming in? And the next we're going to figure out how much money's going out. All right. We're going to do essentially a budget, and there's all kinds of stuff online. Y'all can Google some financial planners, make some really good documents like this. But here it is in Excel format. Your lawyer, oh my God. Your someday lawyer will be so grateful to you for having done this. They may even want to call Hannah Hambriel and thank her that you got all of this organized when you go. And remember, that's a key important part of this course. We're trying to save you money in attorney's fees by getting all of this together so your whole divorce is faster, easier, and cheaper. Okay, so that's part of what you're doing is in investing in that in the future. Okay, so we're going to go through here and you're going to list all of these different expenses. One of those like maid cleaning services at your house. Look, this is trying to get a clue of what you actually spent. Now is not the time to be Scrooge McDuck, okay? You're not going to be, and people do this all the time. They'll like have what they actually spend, but then all of a sudden their pretend spending when they have to put it on paper is like clothes per month, $20 per week. Like, lady, you are not spending $20 per week on your clothes, okay? So try to get a realistic sense of what it is you actually spend per month. You're gonna go through food and groceries, you're gonna go clothes, medical and mental health expenses, car, insurance, things. What about kids stuff? You got school tuition. Also consider summer camps. Y'all, those are not cheap. So I want you to, and do you like annualize it? I don't know how you say that, but like the amount you spend in the summer, say it's like $4,000. I mean, they range so much, but just pretend it's like $4,000. Well, then divide that across the year. So it's $4,800. You do $400 in this column, okay? Because you do it per month. And you just keep going. Like, don't forget about extracurriculars. What about soccer? Are they in travel, dance? Like, just put it. What about babysitting? How much babysitting do you need? And look, this is not like a sense of you're going to make this whole list and then somebody has to give you this money to like live this way or something. People kind of get it confused. It's like, we're just trying to capture for this moment in time, what does your life cost you? So that you know how much money you need to come up with for your all but done plan and how much of a difference, right? Delta is there between what you bring in and what you spend, and how are we going to make up the difference, okay? So what about financial stuff? Like, you're going to put attorney's fees, you have accountant fees. Do you put money into a 529? And then what about the debts? Like, oh, bless, there's only 3 little rows here. You may very well need to add a few more rows, but get them all. Like, one of my clients recently had like a big old Kohl's bill. It just made me laugh. I'm like, girl, you need some Kohl's cash. Anyway, so you may have store credit cards. People often owe money on like solar panels or some sort of big like guardian alarm kind of a situation. So get that done. List all of those things here and feel free. You right click, insert. Let me just show y'all. And you may have to like copy this sort of formatting down. That's how you do that. Okay. So I'm going to undo all this, but you can add those different rows there, right? And if you have even more debt sort of things, you can do it. And then this little booger here can create the difference for you. And don't get too stressed if you mess up the formula or whatever. Just basically what you're trying to do is how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, how much is the difference that I need? And that number becomes important later on if you're talking about spousal maintenance, if you're talking about child support, all of that will come up. For the purposes of this module, we're just trying to figure out if you don't get spousal maintenance right away and you don't get child support right away, how much money do you need to make up the difference, and how are we going to do that? So if spreadsheets are not your thing and this gives you super duper anxiety, skip it. Though I would suggest you do have a general sense, even if you just take a piece of paper on a little notepad or something, okay, and write down how much money comes in and how much money goes out. Look, you've been paying bills a long time. You have a good sense of that, but you're going to need to get real aware of what those financial numbers are as you start thinking about divorce. All right, the final step in the module where we're going to craft our all but done plan. Again, this is an optional one. If you've had it at this point, don't beat yourself up. You can skip it. It's really just an additional step for you to really think through where you are, what you need, and what that difference is, and how we're going to make it up. So let's dive into the next resource. We're going to look at the financial resource assessment tool. Go ahead and get that one pulled up and we'll dive in. All right, some of my Excel girlies are like, woo, spreadsheets. Other people are like, spreadsheets, here we go. But look, this one's a pretty simple one, I think, to work through. On the actual spreadsheet with, again, there's sort of some formulas type stuff in there for you. Here's what we're going to do on this one. It's just kind of getting a little bit more simplified on, I'm just a practical person, okay? Hembrees, my maiden name's Hembry. Hembrees pay our bills. So I always would want to know, what's the thing I need? How much do I have? How much do I need to get? And where am I going to get it? So in this one, we filled in a few examples for you. Okay, let's say you need a retainer for the lawyer, and it's going to be $7,500. And you've got $5,000 like in this would be the idea of like in Wells Fargo bank account. I don't know, maybe you got some gold bars. I had one case, y'all, one time where our client figured out, like told us very late on, like, oh yeah, there's like $26,000 in gold bars sitting in the garage closet. Like, how do you have $26,000? Oh, I forgot. Like, what? So anyway, I hope you have a bunch of gold bars in your closet. I do not. But anyway, okay, so you've got the item, the cost, and then how much you've got. And then there's going to do a math formula. It's got a little red flag. If it's going to be in the negative, right? You need $2,500. How are you going to make that up? Well, maybe you could get $2,000 loan from your mom and grandma could give you $500. So this is how I want you to think about those differences, right? And these are just facts, y'all. No need to get too mad about them, too sad about them. If you know what the facts are, you can deal with it. You don't want to find this out as you've already like told him, or you're showing up at the lawyer's office. That's when you're realizing you don't have enough money to go around. Like, you need to know now, because what you may find if you're not in like a dangerous situation, you may do all of this and say, I need to get divorced, but I gotta circle the wagons. I need to come up with some more resources. I need a longer runway. Or if you don't do that, he'll benefit. If you don't get prepared and you walk in, because he's going to do it. He's going to get prepared on the money. He's going to figure it out. And they'll do to you what I call smoke you out, okay? And the idea being that if they have family and friends who can get them money and they've already got that plan all in place and you haven't, and you run out of money, he can keep spending money on the divorce and get you to make some bad deals and some bad decisions because you're just out. I know in my own divorce, the way I got money for a retainer is I borrowed money from the credit union against my paid off car that like my parents had given me when I graduated college, I think. I borrowed money against that, and I gave that money to a lawyer, and my ex represented himself. That's called pro se on his own. All of the money to the lawyer went away. It was all run out. And then he hired a lawyer, and we basically had to start over. And at that point, anyway, there's a whole long rest of that story. I was on my own for a while, and then finally found a lawyer through a referral. I was in law school, and like a favor of a friend of this guy I'd worked with took me on payments. Most lawyers won't do that, okay? We don't really do that. I was really fortunate to have that happen, okay? So that's how it went for me. That's how I actually did it. So like, look, you may not have a paid off car you can take a loan against from the credit union. Can you get a personal loan? Right. So you got to figure this out and get creative. So the Corolla, like the monthly payment, say it's $375 and you got that money. Okay. So you're good. Just kind of going through these different items. It's most important that you include the things where there's a difference. Like when you do your math, if you don't have enough money to cover the mortgage, how can you make it up? One idea, maybe you could drive DoorDash. Like, how are you going to cover the distance? I call it the delta, right? The difference between where you are and where you need to get to. What is your plan? You need to have that in place, all but done. And some of these you may start like the driving DoorDash and kind of put that away in some other little account if you can. Those conversations about loans and things, we need to get all of that ready to go before you get caught flat-footed and before you're able to be threatened, frightened, harassed, manipulated because you don't have a way to pay for all of this. You don't know what you're going to do once you press go. That's not going to happen to you because you're going to have done the resource assessment, the budgeting template, and crafted your all but done plan. And let me just tell you, you are going to feel so good now that all of this is completed. Because listen, if you made it this far, you've crafted your all but done plan, you've tamed the budgeting template spreadsheet, and you've done the finance resource assessment tool. Those are huge steps. A lot of people would never put in the time and invest in their future to do that. You did. Your future self, your kids, thank you for having what it takes to get back in there. And hey, listen, if you're listening to this and it's your third time through, or you're like, oh my God, that's so much, I can't do it. I suggest what you do is do the all but done plan. Okay. Don't get overwhelmed and discouraged. Forget Excel if you don't want to do that. But get that all but done plan in place so you're not caught flat footed whenever it's time to go. We've got to have a strategy and a plan because he's going to, ladies. He's going to. You've done it. Way to go. Awesome. This is a hard one. You've made it. Keep going. I'll see you in the next module.